Welcome to Buffalo Gameday Recap. I'm Thad Brown along with AJ Feldman. I am here at the scene of the extravaganza. Bills, Rams. Rams win 44-42. Look, we could do about 3 hours on this game. We're not, because I have a plane to catch, and also because no one wants to do 3 hours on this game. But AJ, give me your initial reaction, because I'll start it this way. There was a point in the middle of the fourth quarter of this game where I thought I would be telling my grandkids about being a part of this game, being on the field for what Josh Allen seemed inevitably was about to accomplish, which was rallying the Bills from 3 or 4 different times when they were dead or buried in this game. Even though the Bills lost this game, even if you're a Bills fan, there's a whole lot about this that was so entertaining to watch.
So entertaining because everybody scored at will throughout the entire game. You know, both offenses were clicking, even the special teams were scoring. I think just my initial reaction from this game is that the Bills were due. You know, you win 7 games in a row. You play a good football team on the road on the West Coast. Like, you can't play perfect football forever. The defense was incredibly far from perfect, and you know that's a problem going forward. But I think, you know, it's not a big sign for panic. It's just a game that, you know, the defense looked terrible, and you know, you're going to lose a couple games in the year.
And not to pat myself on the back for this, but I'm going to pat myself on the back for this. You could kind of see it coming. I talked about it in Thad three things. This was a unusual week for the Bills. It was division title on Sunday, celebrate it. You know, there were multiple social media posts, even, you know, Joe Brady, not that it's a huge deal, but this is a guy that after most wins on Twitter will post 1-0, 1-0, 1-0. Well, they win the division, and the Bills team went out and put this video together talking about or showing off all the different doubters from the preseason about the Bills. Well, Brady quote tweets it with the receipts emoji. It's a tiny little thing. It doesn't mean anything. But to me, it underlines how this was not a routine week for the Bills. And then you throw in Micah Hyde shows back up on Wednesday, even the Deion Dawkins, you know, man of the year thing on Thursday, which wasn't a distraction, but it was different. Then you go cross country to play, like you said, a good team. The ingredients were there for this type of performance for the Bills. And Sean McDermott said afterward that he thought that this team wasn't, he didn't, now these are my words, not his, but they weren't quite ready to play. His words were, it didn't seem like we came out urgent. And it did burn them because they got down in this game, had to play catch up, nearly did it. But among the different problems we're going to discuss, having to chase this team in this game pretty much from the start was a big reason why it didn't work out for them.
Yeah, the defense is obviously the biggest part. And you know, do you want to just get right into it? The decision making at the end. Let's get right into it.
Let's talk about that, because that was the finish there too. All right. So despite all these issues and whatever that we're going to get into, the Bills had the ball on the 1 yard line with a minute and change to go, minute 5, something like that. And if you score there and retain all 3 of your timeouts, you are going to get a chance with a stop to get the ball back and potentially win the game. And the way this game was going in the second half, not potentially win the game, they were going to win the game if they got a stop after scoring a touchdown there. You run the quarterback sneak, which I had no problem with on the 1 yard line. I know that obviously there's clock issues, but that's the play that's worked for them 90+% of the time all year. But if you fail on that, you cannot call a timeout. The game effectively ended when Sean McDermott called timeout after the quarterback sneak. He said afterward that he felt like, I have got a bad option A and a bad option B, and neither one was going to work. And he might have been right about that. But I would say that the timeout came with 102. If you allow everybody to umpire, and David Edwards said later that he thought the Rams did a good job of laying on bodies to cause a problem. Even if you let everybody umpire and run the sneak again, I'd say maximum it's a 20-second play. You score with 42 seconds to go. Now you kick off. Maybe the Rams want to run it back. Maybe they don't. Probably not. 3 plays take somewhere in the neighborhood of 15 seconds. If you get a stop, you use all your timeouts. Now you're getting a punt with 27 seconds to go. Sure, you've got no timeouts left, but all you need is a field goal to win. That is exceptionally doable, especially in this game, and way more doable, despite what Sean McDermott said, than the choice he chose. So now, while look, I understand his argument that there wasn't a good choice. No, there wasn't. You lost the opportunity to have a good choice when you gave up 44 points in the first 3 quarters and change. But at that spot, there was a better choice than what he did.
Yeah, because essentially, you know, when you make that decision to call the timeout, you make your choice. Like, what is the reason that you're calling that timeout? It is to save time for you at the other end. So the reason why I call a timeout is to save time. But if you didn't think you had enough time, then, like, you know, it just like, because you went with a sneak. It didn't take long to call a sneak. You ran the same exact play you could have if you just hurried up and ran. So, you call a timeout to save time, but it just doesn't really do anything for you at all.
Yeah, I know where you're going with that. And I think the simple way to think about it is this. When you don't have a timeout in the NFL because of the 40-second play clock, an opposing team is allowed to essentially run 40 seconds off the clock in between snaps. So if you're going to burn that timeout, like you said, to save time, then you need to be preventing more than 40 seconds from running off the clock. And if you're going to just get up and run another sneak again, that's not going to take 40 seconds. It's going to take in the neighborhood of 20. So you're calling a timeout to save yourself 20 seconds when you're going to lose 40 on the back end. That's why that call is the wrong one.
And I was even, questioning on that final drive, the Rams' final drive, or the drive where they scored the touchdown. They had the ball, they get the fourth down conversion. There's 350-ish and change. They run the ball twice before the 2-minute warning. That's a great time to call your timeouts as well, because that saves your 40 seconds. I think, sometimes people get obsessed with the idea of having timeouts on offense to be able to use the entirety of the field. But the timeout is to save time as much as possible. You're saving 40 seconds when you're calling it after a run play by the other team. On offense, it's saving whatever, 25, 20, 30 seconds, etc. So I think they should have started.
Most of the time you're saving less than that.
Yeah,
You can run a play fast.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think they should have started calling timeouts even before then.
I thought about that, and I didn't really have a huge problem with not burning timeouts there because the Bills have been moving the ball so effectively up and down the field. I didn't think they'd have, if they get a stop there. Now, look, I thought that once the Rams scored a touchdown, the Puka one to make it 44-35, I thought the game was done there. Silly me. But if you are using timeouts there, I think you would have time to do whatever you wanted to without the timeouts. And it turned out the Bills almost did. I don't think you need to save yourself so you have 3.5 left. And maybe, now actually that I play it out in my head a little bit, if you do call your timeouts there, now you're getting the ball. If you give the touchdown down 9, you have a chance to go down the field fast. And yeah, you might not have timeouts left, but you're still forcing the Rams to get a first down, which is the same situation the Bills were trying to get into by scoring without using the timeouts in the first place. So yeah, I think now that I think about it, I think you've got a good point there that if you save yourself the time, you give yourself the opportunity down 9 to still win the game. Do you want to argue? Let me just throw this at you quick, since this is your idea. On the flip side, the Bills do get a stop there, and now you got 3.5 minutes to go down 6 to where you only need a touchdown. Can you score slow enough to get in the end zone the way this game was going so that the Rams don't come right back down and kick a field goal on you anyway?
I think so, yeah. I wouldn't be worried about that. Another thing about calling those timeouts earlier, they got almost no advantage from the 2-minute warning. The Rams ran their play at 2:29 before the 2-minute warnings. They saved only 11 seconds because of the 2-minute warning, because, the next play ran at 2. If there wasn't a 2-minute warning there, the next play would have run at 1:50. So they got almost no advantage from that 2-minute warning by the way they played out that at the game. The other thing I want to talk about, which people are talking, is the decision to try and go for a touchdown at the end instead of kicking your field goal earlier. I think people get a little it becomes scoring right away just seems like the easier option, but once you get down there, you just got to get your touchdown. You never know how long you're going to have to go on the next drive. So unless you're really stalling, like from about 25, 30 yards out, I had no problem with them trying to get the touchdown there.
Completely agree. Sean McDermott talked about it, that the way that drive went, they were at midfield with 124 to go. You're not kicking from there. Then all of a sudden, after the penalty, you're at the 16 with 118 to go. Well, if you take 3 shots at the end zone, you can do that in 15, 16 seconds. You're still going to have a minute left with 3 timeouts. You're still going to be in a good spot to have a chance if you get the stop on defense after that, even if you throw 3 incompletes and then kick a field goal. What happened was, because they got the next pass interference and got down to the 1, then they were like, let's punch it in. And obviously after the sneak, that's where the problems began. So, it was not well managed by Sean McDermott. And there are too many times after playoff games, we talk about Sean McDermott having game management issues that don't come up often in the regular season for 1,000 reasons. And this was a bad one. And then on top of that, not that we need to talk about it because we all know it was bad, they got 9 guys on the field to try and block the punt at the end of the game. Not that they're likely to get a punt block. But when you can't have even 10 guys on the
We
field,
had it in the game.
exactly right. It did happen in this game, so it's not impossible. And I know there are some people already talking about, Matthew Smiley's job maybe on the line. Obviously, his department had a bad game in this one, but this happens all the time with Sean McDermott games. And I don't want to be, I'm with you. This is not a Pollyanna hit the panic button, game to where it'll never work out for the Bills. They had a crappy day. It happens, but it's not a brand new situation where these are things that don't happen with this team. There are lots of examples over the years, many in the playoffs, where stuff like this comes up when they come up against a team that they just can't whip up and down the field.
And just in this year alone, they've had 3 losses in the regular season. We can debate the merits of Sean McDermott decision making to the cows come home, but the Houston game and this game, you can argue that Sean McDermott and his time management decisions, the coaching decisions, played a decent role in 2 of those losses there.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with the Houston one, but there is an argument to be made for that one. I get that for sure. All right, let's move from that to what really was problem A1 in this game, and that was the defense. And there was a concern I had going into this one that the Rams were A, full of elite offensive talent, and B, getting their offensive line healthy. Their offensive line had not been fully on the field together until last week. So this was game 2 of their number 1 offensive line playing together. You put that along with Matt Stafford, a guy who's won a Super Bowl, who's not maybe Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes elite, but really good. And then a Puka Nacua game to where I don't know where you rank him in terms of receivers, but there was no one in the league who had a better game than what he did in this game today. On the ground, in the air, ridiculous catches. So you've got a high-level player. Cooper Kupp's your number 2. That's the guy that had 8 million yards 2 years ago. So they had really good personnel in this game. And I was wondering how the defense would hold up. And yeah, there are questions about where they're at injury-wise. Matt Milano's only in game 2 after missing a year and a half. But they were beaten up on the ground early. They were beaten up through the air all game long. And I don't see any way to excuse it other than they got whooped by a better team and a better offensive coach.
Yeah, the third downs was a big problem. They ended up being 11 for 15. It was 10 for 11 at one point, so they just could not get off the field. The defensive line, it wasn't pressuring the quarterback. They didn't get a sack the entire game. They only had 3 QB pressures in the entire game, and none of them are from your edge rushers who are getting paid the big bucks to get a hold of the quarterback. And the run defense, like you said, just was not there at the beginning of the game. There were multiple plays where, I think the best example, there was a rush at the end of the second quarter. Kyron Williams didn't get touched until the safeties. Just he had a force field around him. The defensive tackles got pushed way back. The blocking scheme worked there. And, the defensive tackles have certainly not been a high point for the team this season. And this is just another example of them and the run defense. We've seen it before, just not coming to play.
And I'll give the run D credit. I thought they improved quite a bit in the second half. And I thought that was a significant reason why the Bills had even a chance, because the Rams could not run it at will in the second half. But by then the damage was done. Multiple guys in the locker room talked about how because the Rams could run it early, that opened up everything else. Play action, under center, rollout, everything else was there because they got whooped in the run game early. And of all the things to take from this game and wonder about, well, is this an indication of doom further down the season? This performance by the defense for me is the one that's at the top because A, like you said, the run game issues have been happening all year against every team. It doesn't seem like it's going to go away ever. But B, they haven't faced many passing games that have these type of weapons. And like I said, most teams don't have Puka Nacua, but there's lots of Matt Staffords in the league and there's lots of Cooper Kupps in the league at this point in Cooper Kupp's career. If they're going to get thrown on this much against a team like this, what are they doing next week against Detroit? What are they going to do if, I don't think the AFC has a passing game like this. Philadelphia's offense is more of a run-based offense, but I guess I'll go back to at this level of a passing game on a 6-6 team, who I think is probably better than 6-6, now 7-6. This is the kind of thing. And let me back up for a minute. Against the Chiefs, this is what it would have looked like if Greg Rousseau was not in the backfield the whole game. The Chiefs had people open downfield all game long. And it felt to me like because the Bills could not get the pressure on the edges, and I want to talk about that in a minute, it allowed the Rams to operate from the pocket however they wanted to, and down the field, things were open all day long.
Yeah. When you have receivers who can make plays, and even Christian Benford had a couple of great plays. I mean, Puka Nacua, some of his catches were on great defensive plays by Christian Benford, I believe. So you can only do so much as a cornerback, but no, the outside corners are a strength of this team, and they didn't have their best game. Rasul Douglas, who knows what's going on with his injury front, he leaves with the back injury, then he leaves for sure with the knee injury. So we'll have to see what's going on there. The safeties gave up some big plays. It just was, like you said, one of the best offenses in the league, tearing up a defense. I mean, the stats are going out on Twitter. An offensive performance like this is always a win. Six touchdowns, no turnovers. It's been undefeated in the league so far. Josh Allen's the only quarterback ever, or person ever, to have 3 rushing and 3 passing touchdowns in a game, and it doesn't lead to a lead. So it's got to be a really bad defensive performance to allow that to happen. And it is a concern going forward. There are more, like you said, powerful rushing attacks than passing attacks in the AFC, depending on how the Texans shape up and whether or not, the Chiefs can fully form their offense. But it's certainly a concern. And I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but they've only got one real test left, the Lions, and then they get kind of 3 games to either boost their confidence or kind of, the level of competition goes down incredibly, and then it's going to ramp right back up.
The other problem too, and I talked about it for a moment there, Greg Rousseau has been really the only consistent, legitimate pass rush presence the Bills have. And he has gone against a relentless onslaught of backup and rookie tackles this year. And I'm not going to knock what Greg Rousseau has done. Good players should decimate those guys, and that's what he's done. I think Greg Rousseau can play. In this game, the Rams' strength on the offensive line was the tackles. And in this game, Greg Rousseau was not a factor. Where the Rams were soft was up the middle, and Ed Albert couldn't take advantage of it. So what I wonder coming out of this game, and it's only one game, essentially, if you can block Greg Rousseau, then you can be able to throw on the Bills all day long. And that's the worry I have going forward. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, but that's what you conclude from watching this game today.
Especially the concern next week when they've got Penei Sewell on the offensive line.
Exactly.
So,
exactly.
If you can shut him down, Jared Goff and all those weapons are going to have a lot of time.
Let's talk about Josh Allen in this game. Oh my goodness. I mean, just amazing. And look, now the Rams defense is like paper mache. It might give paper mache a bad name. It's that bad. Regardless, to do what he did to an NFL defense, not only going up and down the field at will, but doing it in like 3-4 play drives, 35 yards at a time or whatever it was. Those aren't exact numbers. That's what it felt like. I really thought, A, he enhanced his MVP case in a loss, which tells you how ridiculously well he played. But B, this was one of the great performances that I have seen in person. Doesn't matter. I'm not like counting of, games on TV, in terms of games I've been at on the field, watching a single player do what he did. I mean, men among boys isn't even enough to talk about this game. He was moving the ball at will down the field. It wasn't just the running plays too. The touchdown pass to Matt Collins is a great throw. The throw to Khalil Shakir to set up one of his other sneak plays is a great throw. And yeah, there were receivers making plays there, but he's doing this too with no Dalton Kincaid, no Keon Coleman. Look, those guys aren't game changers, but they're talented players. He's doing it without a full deck of offensive weapons, and still, forget how the game ended. His day by itself was one of the great performances we've ever seen from a quarterback that does this all the time. I was blown away.
Yeah, and the thing that I think impressed me the most is that you never, it got a little bleak at 31-14, but you never really felt like the Bills were out of it. Josh Allen, the Bills offense, they have this remarkable knack of, really being resilient and never giving up. It's even like, the Ravens game earlier this year, until that trick play went crazy, you're thinking like, okay, things were bad, but we're starting to click. Things are going well. And it's time for a comeback. He's done this many times where, you're down 3 scores and all it takes is one good play by the defense. And the Bills got that today with the punt. And now suddenly it's a ball game. So tremendous resiliency from Josh Allen, the offense today.
Big picture for this game for me. And I still lean more where you started this, which was, this is mostly just one bad day, and a bad day that I think, there were signs there that it was not maybe likely, but certainly possible. There's concern about the run defense. And if you get a combination of an offense that has tackles that can block Greg Rousseau and then talented quarterback receiver personnel, you can cause this Bills defense problems. But I think, as it pointed out when I tried to think of other teams that have that combo, there aren't many of those this year. I mean, I don't think Russell Wilson is that kind of quarterback. Where CJ Stroud is, to your point, isn't that quarterback right now. Nico Collins is that kind of receiver. The Chiefs don't have that right now. The Ravens, they're a run-based team. Maybe the Chargers with Justin Herbert, but they don't have the receivers to match that. So this combination, I think, was relatively unique. That doesn't mean that teams won't go to school on this and think, well, if we can just take care of 50, then we can do whatever we want otherwise. And that would be the concern for me going forward. But I'm not going to, press the panic button over it, because I don't think the Bills will run into that too many other times, maybe before the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and I think the big takeaway is just it's going to maybe lessen some of the incredibly lofty expectations that the Bills have rolled up on this winning streak. They roll off 7 games in a row. They look great. They beat up on a banged up 49ers team. They take down Mahomes and the Chiefs, and expectations were sky high. This lowers them down a little bit. Granted, they go into Detroit next week and beat up on the Lions. They beat the Lions.
They go right back to high.
It's going to go right back up. But I think it's just going to, lower everything down. And then on the other side of that, just for purely standings, we're recording this as the Chiefs are up 13-0 at the half. The race to catch them just got a whole lot harder, because now they're down 2 in the loss column. So Chiefs are going to have to drop 2 games. They do have some tough opponents coming up. Kansas City does, but the margin for error got a whole lot smaller today.
Yeah, that's for sure. Now I'll play this out with you quick. Kansas City's last 4 games, not in the right order, are Cleveland, Denver, Pittsburgh, and Houston. Can they lose 2 of those? Because I think they can. And they haven't even won tonight yet either, as we're talking about this. So if you lose 2,
they certainly can.
Go ahead.
Yeah, they certainly can. You can get your 2 losses. The other thing now you have to worry about, and I don't really think that the Steelers, I think they've got a loss or 2, and then they've got a tough schedule as well. But if one of those losses the Chiefs suffer is to the Steelers, now you have to worry about them as well for this 1 seed.
So, all right. My thought was, with the 1 seed, if the Bills can beat the Rams or the Lions, they go 14-3, and I think that would be enough to get them the 1 seed. I think the Chiefs lose 2. That is still on the table. Is the Pittsburgh thing worth talking about right now, or no? I haven't looked at all the tiebreakers and all the other stuff right now.
They've got the same. Well, they've got a really tough schedule coming down the stretch at the Eagles, at the Ravens, Chiefs, and the Bengals. Okay. So I'm not super,
worried
thinking that the Steelers are going to get the 1 seed, but it is worth pointing out that one of the teams to potentially help the Bills out could be in their way.
Okay. Yeah, that's certainly an issue now, or more of an issue than it was 24 hours ago. But look, this is still a team that's in very good shape. They played a bad game. Yes, some things may have been exposed, but there's plenty of time to fix it going, maybe not fix it. There's plenty of time to figure out how to deal with it going forward. I don't think the run defense is getting fixed, but can you do enough around that to be successful and win big games? I think you can. The other part of this too is the Bills only have 1 win over a really good team. That's the Chiefs. I mean, I thought if they had won this game against the Rams, this might have been their second best win of the year, and they couldn't win this game. So I think that's another long-term concern. They really don't have the litany of excellent wins to, make their 10-3 record look like they're a strong playoff battle-tested team. Again, you beat Detroit next week, and that solves a lot of those questions. Anything else from you for this?
No, I think it's time for you to catch a flight.
Yes, it is. All right. As always, you can watch Buffalo Gameday Recap at rochesterfirst.com. Click on the sports tab. We're at 8 Sports Extra. We're also on YouTube and wherever you can find your podcast. Next week, Bills and Lions, still a monster game, even with a loss. Take the over, by the way. I think that's a good bet right this second. For AJ Feldman, I'm Thad Brown. Thanks for watching and listening. I'm going to get on a plane. Hopefully I'll see you in Rochester on Monday.